Hello everyone, welcome back to our 2025 positional ranking series here. Today we have a fan favorite, the wide receiver position. This has been one of the most exciting, dynamic positions coming into the league for a while now. And we definitely have some guys at the top of this draft that are very, very exciting as well. So we're going to be going through my top 10 wide receivers in this draft class as well as some honorable mentions as well. Let's just go ahead and dive right into it. Here starting at number 10 with Xavier Restrepo, the senior out of Miami. He's 5'10", 198 pounds. He's definitely going to be a slot-only type of player, and that's why I might not be quite as high on him as his production may suggest, because he had a really productive year with Cam Ward, over 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns. He is the guy that you kind of think of, though, when you think of your stereotypical short, white, unathletic, relatively good route runner type at the slot receiver position. And I think he pretty well fits into that stereotype. He has a great release package. He has great hands. He doesn't drop the ball very often. He is really, really scrappy in the running game. He's a fantastic blocker. He'll work really hard off the ball to open up running lanes for his guys. He runs a pretty good route tree, but when you look at his traits, he just doesn't have a lot of speed. He doesn't have a lot of size. I don't think he ran away from ACC defensive backs relatively often, which is a little bit of a concern. I think the separation scores are generally pretty good, but I also don't love some of his ability to just truly separate with his athletic traits once he does put a move on someone. I also don't think he's very good after the catch because he just has athletic limitations, and he's not the biggest contested catch weapon as well because he is just on the smaller side. So a lot of the smaller things that you like to see in a wide receiver: blocking, really good hands, good release package. I think Restrepo does really well, but his athletic ceiling is going to cap him, in my opinion, as probably being a solid wide receiver 3 in the slot, somebody that can be a nice chain mover, pick up big first downs. I definitely see a role for him in the NFL, and I do have a third round grade on him, a 76.41. I think he will definitely have a productive career. He will put up good yardage and good stats, but I don't think he's ever going to be the focal point of an offense like some of the other guys up higher on this list. At number 9, we have a guy that's kind of the complete opposite of Restrepo. It's Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. He's a senior, but he is well built, 6'4", 215 pounds. He's kind of more of your prototypical outside X type of receiver. And he still doesn't have the most ridiculous traits. He does have fantastic size. That traits tab there takes into account athleticism, agility, speed, height, all of that stuff. So even the top guys, if you're missing one of those categories, does bring your score down a little bit. So don't look too much into the traits tab there. It's all broken down in between all of the tabs as well. There's subcategories. But I think Higgins is a guy that really wins with his size. He's really good at contested catches. He has really strong, powerful hands that he uses at the catch point to box out defenders and make plays downfield. I do think he runs a pretty good, diverse route tree. You'll see him run a lot of vertical concepts because that's where he's really effective, but he'll go over the middle of the field on digs and slants. He'll win with a pretty good release package at times. I think there are times that his route running, he's not manipulating the defender a whole lot. He's not pushing off as much as he possibly could with those long athletic arms. I think that there's definitely room for improvement in the nuance of a lot of his routes, but the physical traits are definitely interesting with his size and athleticism. And he is the kind of guy that was very productive, had over 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. I do think he can be a solid number 2 wide receiver on the outside. I have a round 2 to 3 grade on him, a 78.17. I do think that for a guy his size, he does get into breaks pretty well. He'll break down. You see some of these high-waisted wide receivers that really struggle to change directions and things like that. I think Higgins does it at a pretty good level for his size, and so I definitely do think he could be a starting caliber wide receiver in the NFL. Moving to number 8, a guy that I am definitely high on, Jaylen Royals out of Utah State. He's a senior, 6 foot, 205 pounds, and he has some really interesting things in his game. Most notably, I think he is built really well. He kind of looks like a running back out there, and in no way am I saying that the same caliber of prospect, but I think Jaylen Royals and his play style reminds me a teeny tiny bit of Ja'Marr Chase in just how he's built, how dynamic he is after the catch. I think he wins with athleticism in a lot of the same ways, subtle push-offs, contested catches, wins downfield. He's nowhere near the same caliber of prospect as Ja'Marr Chase, but I can definitely see a Ja'Marr Chase light as his player comp. I think he has good traits. He is somebody that does have good speed, rumored to be 4.3, 4.4 speed. That's plenty good. I think his route running is maybe an area of his game that he can continue to improve, add more nuance to his route runnings, head fakes, being able to truly kind of confuse defenders at the break point of a route. But I like his release package. I think he has good hands. He can win contested balls downfield, back shoulder fades, things like that. He's definitely good in those situations. Utah State, they obviously didn't have great quarterback play. Spencer Petras from Iowa, who is, one of the worst Power 5 quarterbacks I've seen in a long time, was their starter there. So 7 games this year, did miss some with injury, but 55 receptions, 834 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But if you go back 1 year, he had over 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns playing in the Mountain West. So this dude has put up production. He definitely has a lot of yards after catch ability, and that's really where he shines. Get the ball in his hands on quick screens, slants, just patterns that will allow him to get the ball in his hands and go up against a corner one-on-one. That's where he really, really thrives. And his ability to create yards after the catch, and, that is so, so valuable to an offense. I do think he's definitely going to have a role. Might kind of be as a little bit of a gadgety player. I think he's more complete as a player than, say, like Malachi Corley last year, who was, in my opinion, kind of a pure gadget type of player coming into the league. I think Royals is a bit more developed as a route runner. He's somebody that does have, good technique in his game. It's not super, super polished. I think he can continue to improve it, but the physical traits, his ability to run after the catch is very tantalizing. At number 7, maybe a name that a lot of people haven't heard of. It's Jack Bech, the senior wide receiver out of TCU, 6'2", 215 pounds. And Bech is a guy who really did not put the production on the field really at all. He was a transfer from LSU. He was really good his freshman season at LSU. It took some time to get into the TCU program and really get things going, but in 2024 he had really exploded. In 12 games, had 62 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I thought he was a really nice, consistent weapon for TCU's offense. He doesn't have the most impressive traits. He has good size at 6'2", 215 pounds. He can definitely play on the outside, but he doesn't have great speed. He doesn't have great athleticism. I don't think he's running away from a lot of guys. And his route running can continue to improve. I think he needs to create better separation, more subtle push-offs, being able to manipulate at that route break. I think there's definitely room for improvement. But a lot of the smaller things, kind of like we talked about before with Xavier Restrepo, I think Bech does it a little bit better, and he's bigger as well. He has fantastic hands. He really just does not drop the football at all. He's a fantastic run blocker. He's somebody that really can put you in positions where you can run behind him, even have him as a lead blocker type. He has great route tree. Somebody that, even if he hasn't had a ton of playing time, he showed the ability to win over the middle of the field. He can win after the catch as well. He is pretty strong at 6'2", 215. So even if he's not running away from people, he's throwing defenders off him. He's good in contested catch situations. He'll go up and make a play. So I really do like Jack Bech. I think he is kind of your standard wide receiver 2 in the NFL. I have a round 2 to 3 grade on him. I think he is a guy that can absolutely come in, be an immediate contributor right away, and be a really solid number 2 option in an offense that, I think he could definitely provide some value for a team, and he's my number 7 wide receiver because of it. At number 6, we get into a guy who definitely had a lot of hype this year, Isaiah Bond out of Texas, the junior, 5'11", 180 pounds. And the big thing with Bond is he really just has not been able to put it together. He was a transfer from Alabama. Pretty much everybody thought that he was going to be the next Xavier Worthy, the next Adonai Mitchell, and he really just hasn't turned into this superstar type of wide receiver that a lot of people hope for because the production is just really not there. Only 33 catches this year in 12 full games, 532 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's highly disappointing based on how talented this dude is. And I'm definitely lower on Quinn Ewers than most. Look at my quarterback video to kind of see my thoughts on him. But I think Bond was held back a bit by quarterback play this year. But at the same time, you've got to get better production out of a guy that, potentially could be a day 2 pick in the draft, maybe even a day 1 pick. 530 yards is not going to cut it in, your last season in college football. However, the traits with Bond are absolutely exciting. His speed is very real. It's, true, threaten you with the deep ball type of speed. When he gets the ball in his hands, he can run away from guys. He is really impressive when it comes to speed, his change of direction, his ability in that regard. He's not a big guy at 180 pounds, but he has enough speed and size where I think the traits are very enticing. And I was really impressed with his hands. He's not a guy like Xavier Worthy last year who had concerns about, his short catch radius and his ability to haul balls in at a consistent rate. I think Bond is really good when it comes to his hands catching. I really like him in that regard, and his route running is actually way more polished than I think a lot of people realize. You see him routing up guys, creating a ton of separation because, at the route break, he's so quick and dynamic, you don't know which way he's going to go. I think his release is really good as well. He runs a variety of routes. The big thing is, he's not super dynamic after the catch yet. He hasn't just shown a lot of that production. I think he absolutely can be due to his speed, but he's not going to throw a lot of guys off of him. Contested catches is just not his game. You're not drafting him to be a big red zone type of threat. It's just not his game. And he's not a very good run blocker as well. But the traits are very intriguing. If you can get over the lack of production for Isaiah Bond, I definitely think, he's a very exciting type of player. I don't think he necessarily has wide receiver 1 potential, but I do think he can be a really solid piece of a room. And I do have a round 2 grade on him, an 82.04, somebody that I think is a very intriguing option out of Texas at number 6 here. At number 5, we have Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State, senior, 6'1", 205 pounds. And Abuka is the kind of guy who doesn't have elite traits. He doesn't have bad traits. It's definitely good enough that he can be a solid NFL player. I think he is a fine NFL athlete, but he's not a special NFL athlete. His size is solid. His athleticism, his change of direction, his speed, those are all solid metrics for him, but he's not elite in any of those areas. Really where he wins is just with his reliability, his understanding of defenses, being able to settle into zones, manipulate guys at that route break, create separation with nuance, have great releases, run a variety of routes. That's really where Emeka Egbuka thrives. And he plays a lot in the slot, and I don't think he necessarily has to be a slot player, but I do think that's ultimately where he's going to be best. He had a bit of a down year last year with Kyle McCord at quarterback. He definitely has kind of ramped things back up, but even in his own offense, as the number 5 wide receiver in this draft class, he's behind true freshman Jeremiah Smith when it comes to kind of the pecking order at Ohio State. Though 65 receptions, 824 yards, and 9 touchdowns sure isn't too bad for Emeka Egbuka in his senior year. I'm not the biggest fan of his run blocking. I've heard other people say that he's a fantastic run blocker. I like his effort. I think the technique is a little bit off at times. His contested catch ability, he can do it from time to time, but that's not really where he's winning. He's winning over the middle of the field, being able to create separation, small windows that allow his quarterback to throw it into him. He'll make the tough catch over the middle of the field. I just think he does a lot of the small things really, really well. And I think he has a very high floor in the NFL because of that. I think he's most likely going to be a wide receiver too. I have a round 2 grade on him, but I think he can be a big-time contributor. He's somebody that I think can be a guy that steps in immediately and helps fill a gaping hole in a wide receiver room this offseason. And, I could definitely see him sneaking into the end of round 1. I think early round 2 is probably where I would be looking for him, but I do like Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. At number 4, maybe a guy that I'm a bit higher on, I have Elric Manor out of Stanford. Redshirt junior, 6'2", 210 pounds. I'm definitely kind of a sucker for the guys that I know can be outside receivers. They've shown the ability to win contested catches, but they're not only doing that. And that's, some of the problems with guys that have failed in the NFL. They can't create separation. I don't think Manor is that kind of guy. I think he does run routes really effectively. I think he has a really good release. He will use subtle push-offs to create separation in space. But really where he wins is with his size, his contested catch ability, and his ability to run after the catch as well with his good athleticism and size. That really allows him to pick up extra yards. I think his route running is pretty good. It's pretty nuanced. I think he can manipulate defenders pretty well. He can get defenders on his back hip and really create small, subtle windows that if the quarterback is good, which his quarterback really wasn't at Stanford, he can be a really, really good player. He was pretty productive, even with bad quarterback play, 63 receptions, 831 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He's a really good run blocker. He's somebody that I think, if he's your number 1 wide receiver, you'd maybe like to improve on it. But if he's your number 2 wide receiver in the NFL, I think you'd be really, really happy. So Manor provides kind of that alpha type of body and build and traits. I think he has a ways to go to really turn into that caliber of player. Manor kind of reminds me of somebody like Michael Pittman, who I think does a lot of the same things. He's a good contested catch winner. He's a good enough athlete, and he's somebody that can win after the catch with his size. I think he could turn into that caliber of player, and I do really like Elric Manor out of Stanford. Getting into the top three, I have Luther Burton at number 3 here, the junior out of Missouri, 5'11", 205 pounds. This guy had a down season production-wise, but don't let it fool you. He is a very, very good player. Only 676 yards and 6 touchdowns this year. Brady Cook and Missouri's quarterback play just kind of fell off a cliff, and Burton definitely suffered for it. But you go back to past tape, and even the tape this year, it's really good. He has nice traits. He is athletic. He has good change of direction. He's not overly huge, and he definitely has done a lot of his damage from the slot. I think he can be an outside receiver. I think you can be very creative and move him around. And I don't think you're really maximizing his talent if you are just putting him in the slot. I think you need to be creative with Burton because he's so good with the ball in his hands. After the catch, he's super explosive. He'll throw defenders off of him. He's dense. He's the kind of guy that you throw it out to him on a bubble screen. You line him up in the backfield and you let him go to work on a linebacker. You run him on jet sweeps and handoffs and things. You get creative with Luther Burton because you want to get the ball in his hands. But unlike a guy like we talked about before with Jaylen Royals, who is still developing a lot of his game at wide receiver, or in the past, guys like Cordarrelle Patterson or Laviska Shenault, who are guys that you really want to get involved with the ball in his hands, but they're not super great at wide receiver. I think Burton is way more advanced than those guys. His release package is really good. He has good route running nuance. He'll find short areas and zones where he has a window to his quarterback. He has pretty good hands, runs a pretty diverse route tree. I think Burton does pretty much everything at a good to serviceable level. His run blocking is solid. His ability to go up and make contested catches, back shoulder fades, he has shown it all on tape. The explosiveness is there at times as well. I do really like Luther Burton. I think he is a little bit more of a, round 1 to 2 type of player for me than a true round 1 grade, but I do really like Burton. I think I would definitely take him in round 1. I'm not going to have 32 first round grades. So Burton is the type of player that I do think can be a pseudo wide receiver 1. I'd feel maybe better adding him to a true number 1 alpha next to him where he can be kind of a design touch type of player. But I do think that he'll definitely provide value to a team in the NFL and be a really solid wide receiver 2 and maybe kind of even climb into that wide receiver 1 type of conversation. At number 2, I have Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona. The junior is very uniquely built. At 6'5", 212 pounds. He has ridiculous traits, athleticism, size, pretty much all the things that you would look for. The production there is there as well. 84 receptions, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. And I think Noah Fifita, the Arizona quarterback, took a step back this year as well. So he was doing that kind of despite poor quarterback play. He's got ridiculous size. He moves really, really well for his size as well. He is the type of player that, I definitely think could turn into a wide receiver 1 with a lot of his traits. His contested catch ability is really impressive. He'll go up, make big plays for his quarterback. He runs a diverse route tree. He'll do everything over the middle of the field, as well as winning vertically underneath as well. Once you get the ball in his hands, he's definitely dangerous. With his long strides, they pick up speed really quick, force defenders to take bad angles, and with his size, he can throw guys off him as well. His route running is pretty nuanced for a guy like that as well. He does need to clean up some of his drops. I think he can be a little bit nastier as a run blocker as well. But there's a lot to like with Tetairoa McMillan's game. I think he's not on the same caliber as some of the great wide receiver prospects we've seen come out recently. But to me, he's a solid round 1 player, an 89.08 grade. Somebody that I could definitely see him being in my top 10 prospects. And when it comes time to the draft, I really like him. And I do think he has potential to turn into a really nice wide receiver 1 for a team that is likely going to be drafting him very high in this upcoming draft. Looking at some of the honorable mentions before we get to number 1, a couple guys that missed the list. I still have a ton of wide receivers I want to watch as well. I got through 19 of them, and there's still tons more that I want to watch. So this could absolutely change before the draft comes up, but Evan Stewart out of Oregon, he's somebody with, really good blazing speed. He's really athletic. I think he creates better separation than people give him credit for. Just hasn't had much production, despite all of that. been at Texas A&M and Oregon, so interesting player there. Jaylen Royals out of Iowa State. He's somebody that played alongside Jaden Higgins, was very, very productive. I do think he's kind of a slot-only type of player. He's a bit shorter. I don't think he has great arm length, but I do think he can be a productive slot weapon at the next level. Tez Johnson, a dude that is razor thin, 160 pounds, but if you can get over that, the dude has blazing speed. He has pretty good route running. He can create good separation. He's an outlier when it comes to size, but I do like a lot of the kind of speed elements of his game and his ability to create separation in space. Xavier Williams is a crazy athlete. He's gigantic. He wins contested catches at an absurd rate. They'll give him handoffs and design touches, things like that. I think he lacks a lot of nuance at wide receiver, but the design touch type of player, if you get the most out of Xavier Williams, I definitely could see him turning into a Cordarrelle Patterson, Laviska Shenault type of player. Torrey Horton out of Colorado State, really interesting player. Unfortunately lost his season due to injury this year, but definitely was very productive last year. He's a little bit skinnier, but has good speed, creates some good space, and can run after the catch as well. So I do like Torrey Horton. And some other guys on this list that I didn't mention. There's some really, really good depth in this wide receiver class this year. But moving on to number one, I think I will definitely get some hate for this, but I think Travis Hunter, this is independent of his play at corner. I think he's the best pure wide receiver in this class as well. And so much of his game is based on athleticism right now, and that's absolutely true. He does lack a little bit more nuance than somebody like Tetairoa McMillan in his route running. His run blocking is not very good. But you also have to remember, this guy is splitting his reps on practice and on the field at corner. And if he fully commits to this wide receiver position, he's ridiculous. His hands are fantastic. His ability after the catch to make plays because of how crazy of an athlete he is really, really special. His route running, I think, is pretty good. He finds space. He comes back to the ball. He'll manipulate defenders at the catch point. A lot of that is due to his athleticism as well. But again, imagine if he can get really, really nuanced at this, how good he can be. And the most ridiculous part is at 6'1", 185 pounds, he should be a Z type of wide receiver, a guy that runs downfield as your deep threat. His ball skills are some of the best I have seen out of any wide receiver prospect that I've ever scouted. His ability to just track the ball, understand where its flight is going. It helps him at corner so much too, but at wide receiver, his ball skills are ridiculously good. I think his traits are out of this world good at the wide receiver position. And I mean, he's really productive. 92 receptions, 1,100 yards, 14 touchdowns, all while playing the entire time on defense as well. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good of a wide receiver he is. I was all on the train of Ashton Genty should win the Heisman, but I think Travis Hunter is being severely overlooked as a wide receiver. He is a really, really great player. And if you don't believe that, you got to turn on the tape because he is a special player and a special athlete as well. As a pure wide receiver, I just have a round 1 grade on him. I don't even have a top 10 grade on him. I'm not in love with the wide receivers in this class. I did like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors better than these guys. I had a similar grade on Rome Odunze as I do Travis Hunter. So just kind of to give you an idea of where I view this class, I don't think this class is ridiculously special, but I think there's absolutely guys at the top in Hunter and McMillan, Burton. Those guys can be big-time contributors for an NFL team. So let me know your thoughts. Wide receiver is always one that people have a ton of thoughts on. So I want to hear all of yours. Who's some underrated guys that I need to get to next, or who you think should be higher on this list? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this kind of content, other NFL draft rankings, mock drafts, scouting reports, all that good stuff, please hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss anything. I would truly appreciate it. It means the world to me and helps support this channel as well. So thank you so much for watching. I will catch you all in the next one.